Welcome to the Oscoda Township regular board meeting for January 27th, 2020. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mr. Cummings.
Here.
Ms. McGuire, absent. Mr. Gajewski.
Here.
Mr. Palmer.
Here.
Mr. Nordine here. Mr. Byer.
Here.
Mr. Weed.
Here. All right, for agenda additions, is there anything?
No.
Okay, is there a motion for the agenda?
Make the motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support. Support.
Motion by Mr. Gajewski, support by Mr. Cummings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion's passed. All right, we're into our first public comment period. For this first one, a card needs to be filled out, submitted to the superintendent. There's a 4-minute time limit, and when you come up, please introduce yourself. Do we have a card?
We do. We have Robert Tazier, associated with Form-Based Code.
Good evening, Robert Tazier from the Planning Commission. Tonight I'd like to talk a little bit what's on the agenda about form-based code. In 2016, the Planning Commission was tasked to rewrite our master plan. In doing so, we sent out a very good survey and held many public hearings. The results of those surveys and the public hearings were very informative. The community's top priorities were consistently focused on the downtown area, empty storefronts and lack of businesses. The Planning Commission at that time started looking into other communities that had similar problems as ours. We asked to join the Michigan Association of Planners to educate us in areas of planning and zoning for future development. This board asked the Planning Commission to look into form-based code type of zoning about 2 years ago. Since that time, we have looked at form-based code. We went to several seminars. We even brought instructors here to Oscoda to help us understand the value of form-based code. We asked this board to approve the funding for the Planning Commission to hire a consultant firm to help guide us down the path for our community, which you granted by resolution. At this time, also, our superintendent began the process of RRC certification. Much to the surprise of the Planning Commission, form-based code was one of the initiatives for RRC certification. So we were already ahead of the process. After several town hall meetings, stakeholder meetings, work sessions, public hearings, community discussions, the Planning Commission has written new zoning for the B1 district. It's called the State Street Business and Neighborhood Districts. The Planning Commission is sending this zoning for your consideration. The community asked us, and we listened. The Board of Trustees has asked us to bring solutions that have been plaguing this community for a long time. This is a proven method to revitalize a struggling district. We ask this board to approve this zoning for the future of the community. That's it.
Thank you.
Good.
Do we have any other cards?
That's it.
All right, then on to the consent agenda. Any comments regarding the minutes for January 10th and January 13th? Comments on the payment of bills for $61,143.48. All right, is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we accept the consent agenda. Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer?
Yes.
Mr. Gieske?
Yes.
Mr. Weed?
Yes, motion's passed. Subcommittee reports and project updates. First is the January engineering report from Rowe.
Good evening, Rick Freeman with Rowe Professional Services Company. I'd like to take this quick minute to introduce two key members of our team that basically back me up and provide me the information to present to you on a daily basis. I've got Dino Parka, my project manager, works on the day-to-day project management of your projects, and obviously the most recent one, the Loud Water Main project. And then we have Sam Calicay, one of our engineers. Again, she's the one that kind of pulls together all the funding information, put the applications together, and everything that basically Dean and I need to, again, do our daily job. So I just wanted to they were up here today when we had a meeting with F&B, to give this opportunity for you to meet the team, part of the team that's behind me and working with Oscoda Charter Township.
Thank you.
Okay, the engineering report for January. First page is pretty much status quo. Phase 1 water main assistance. The project is essentially complete. All the paperwork is being finalized and will be transmitted to the township. We still have 3 additional properties that we're looking to hook up water services to, down by Forest and this and that. But to do that, we need to secure some additional funding as part of future projects. Old Orchard Campground electrical upgrades. Traded some correspondence with Gary Scott day before yesterday. Looks like it's slow moving out there, obviously with the weather, but they've got final coordination. The pedestals are supposed to be coming into Haney Electric, I think, either this week or next. That'll be kind of the next big stage as far as getting the pedestals installed and then starting to do the wiring. The township dug the trenches. They got to do a little bit of cleanup on that due to the weather, obviously, but it's a slow go, obviously, with the time of year, but they feel it should be on schedule to have everything up and running by the time the campers start rolling in the spring. One thing they worked out is if you remember, we had an allowance in the bid for the Consumers Energy power drop. Consumers Energy was out there either right before the holidays or right after, and they came up with a solution that would be a little bit more cost effective. So that allowance of $15,000, that should actually come in under that. Don't know exactly how much yet, but it should be a fairly significant amount less than that allowance that we had in there. Pump station 25, again working with Doug Mullen and Catherine at F&B. I believe the pumps are back. So we'll be working on the elevation controls with that station and some of the stations upstream from that. Again, just to get better operation out of that, out of the sanitary sewer system in that area. Site plan reviews, no new site plans have come in recently, so that's status quo. Wordsmith base utility evaluation, again, providing assistance on that as needed basis. Rinse station at Rathliff Park, we provided the information to the township for further action in the future. The Old Orchard campground dock erosion, we've submitted a proposal for that, and again, that's pending further action by the township. The plat right-of-way issues in a special assessment district, again, we've submitted that information for township action in the future. Projects to date, the Phase 2 water main. We've essentially, I think, finalized all the paperwork with the contractor, preliminary paperwork with the contractor. There's a few small pieces of information we need to get to Troy Shank at USRD to schedule the closing, which we have to get taken care of by February 28th. Shouldn't be any problem with that. And then with the closing, then we just wait for the weather to break in the spring for that construction to start. So the state railroad permit came in last week, and there'll be further action later on in the meeting on that. I believe that was the last permit that we were looking for. Water main funding assistance, I believe Dave handed out a spreadsheet. Again, we've went through the phases as we've worked on, got those all set up. And now there's been several opportunities come up that we're chasing down for the township. Obviously the USDA RD loan application opportunity is still out there if we ever need to or want to resurrect that. We are ready and prepared to submit on any ECWAG grant that could come up. We haven't heard of anything new coming up recently, but that's still out there. The CBDG IR grant that we talked about 2 weeks ago, that application is coming up on February 14th. We've basically, I think, got most of the information put together on that. We'll just need a final decision by the township on the local match percentage and which fund or whatever that's coming from, so we can get that into the application. But the preliminary plans, estimate, and all of that stuff is in pretty good shape, so we should be right on time with that grant. DWRF, SRF, that's the Drinking Water Revolving Fund and State Revolving Fund. Drinking water, obviously, for water. State Revolving Fund for the sanitary sewer side through Eagle. Those applications are underway. That was one of the reasons we were up meeting with Doug and Catherine today to go over the capital improvement plans that the township has put together on both the sanitary and the drinking side, water side, and starting to look at how to prioritize those projects and those project plans to make the most sense as far as, like on the sanitary sewer with pump stations, controls versus the actual pump station rehabs and the order that we want to recommend to the township to have those done in. So we got that underway. The Eagle teaser grant or paperwork is basically a precursor to the DWRF and SRF. We basically get that letter of interest, into Eagle, and that helps prioritize when the DWRF and SRF come in, and again puts the township in a good position for opportunities there. Through some information that F&V was able to provide through the study that was been done out at the lagoons, there's the Eagle SWIF application for assisting the township when PFAS contamination limits are established for the effluent coming out of the lagoon system, sanitary system. That's an 80% grant with a 20% local match, so we're monitoring that as far as when would be the appropriate time to start pursuing that. And then one that's on the agenda tonight is the Consumers Energy 2020 Planet Award. It's they give out two grants a year, $250,000 each. By February 4th, we need to submit a letter of interest. The general categories that are available to apply for are land and water. That's very general, very vague kind of description. On the land side, it's enhancement. Supports nonprofit agency focused on enhancing, protecting, and restoring land in Michigan. And on the water side, it's focused on reduction of in use of water, water conservation, and water quality around the state. So technically, based with your contamination, the water quality side probably would be a candidate for this letter of interest, but more likely than not, the enhancement on the land side, we were thinking that would be a good letter of interest to submit for the trail. Because it is for land that either is serviced or adjoining Consumers Energy, which obviously the trail is. It's through the natural, the Huron National Forest. So again, along the river. So our recommendation is to pursue it on the land side for a trail match, because that probably lines up better with the criteria that they're going to look at. So that'll be on the agenda later. So that's the funding opportunities that we're chasing right now. Obviously keeping tabs on anything and everything that comes up, moving those things forward. Oscoda Street Water Main Project, which was on the past engineering report, is now will be included in that CBDGIR grant application. So if we're successful, we can get that water main project underway. Stormwater usage rate, I provided the township our evaluation on the Missile Street GAC plant, and the recommendation there was a charge of $3,500 per month, based on the criteria we established a little over a year and a half ago. This one's a little bit higher per month because it's a smaller sewer, and we're actually going to be occupying with the discharge on that a higher percentage of the capacity of that pipe. And that pipe is in a little worse condition than the stormwater discharge pipes of the last GAC plant. The ordinances obviously are underway. We're finalizing some recommendations on the rate fee policy and township facilities. That's we had the work session back on November 7th, and we're waiting for further direction from the township on that. The Phase 3 trail project is continuing to go through the process, the TAP grant application, the FLAP grant application, and we're also still trying to resolve concerns that MDOT has on the trail location and all that in the Foot Village area by the dam store and Desi's. I did have a good meeting with Bruce Bolin at the Iosco County Road Commission today concerning that. And the idea there is, I think if we can get the road commission on board with an alternative of running the trail along River Road on the south side of the road, not going back up behind there, that option, the road commission is all for that. We just need to run that by them. I think that is one then that we could get design exceptions through with MDOT, working with them directly in Lansing. So that's the next alternative that we're looking at. So we'll be continuing on that, running those options by the township to make sure you're good with that before we run it by the road commission, and then move it through MDOT and hopefully get that underway. And then obviously if we're successful on the grant, that helps you towards your local match. And then Parks and Rec grant opportunities, we're working with the township on an as-needed basis for any applications that might come up for that too. So that's our report. Any questions?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
I have two or three.
Mhm.
The first one is an easy one. The rinse station at Ratliff Park.
Yes.
You're talking about cleaning boats for zebra
No,
mussels?
this is for there was a concern for the swimmers
Yeah.
coming up and then having a station that they could, similar to rinsing their feet off of the sand, an elevated station that they could actually stand under the rinse station, all that stuff. So we worked with WTA to come up with some very straightforward, simple plumbing that could be added to the restroom facilities there, and proceed with that if and when the township wants to.
The second question is the Consumers Planet Award.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I missed it, can we apply for two, the land and the water, or should we have one and mention both?
Probably just the one. That we probably should prioritize it. I mean, again, you can take the chance of going after two, but I don't know if that really is the best approach to it.
Well, then which one do you think, if we're gonna do one? Obviously, the land next to the bike path that you talked about, and of course, the water projects that we're doing. Which is our strongest?
I think the land one is because if you read in it with the fact that they put enhancement in there under the land criteria, I think the trail better lines up with that. Under the water side, water quality, I think they're looking more at surface water quality and all of that, and not providing drinking water due to well contaminations and all that stuff. That's our read into it, and because it's the Consumers Energy Foundation, there's really not an opportunity to call and get clarification on that. So that was kind of our read on it as far as what I think the best pursuit is. And the fact that we were looking at all the other options for water and the water main, we thought this was an opportunity for the trail.
Okay.
So.
I just might mention that Consumers, as you know,
Mm-hmm.
has a lot of different grant programs,
Correct.
not just this one.
Correct.
And this township was able to get, I made a mistake when I talked to you a few minutes ago about this, a little over $200,000 from Consumers for the pier.
The pier.
down
Mm-hmm. That was through the fish kill.
there. Exactly,
Right.
yes. Another question, the CDBG grants,
Mhm.
do you have a recommendation, or does your colleague regarding the match that we go up to the max 25? Is that going to help a lot? Or should
The higher your local match between, and preferably you'll score the most points in a local match somewhere between 20 and 25%. I provided Dave and Mr. Weed kind of a different breakdown of a variety of local match dollars, of where you could pick and choose from, and then you would have to decide which fund that would come out of from the township standpoint. But just like any of these grants, the higher the local match that you can put in, the more points that you score. Everything else on that application, the township aligns very well on. The fact that you are, got your projects and your phases and your estimates all pretty well nailed down, so we're going to be able to turn the projects around quickly and all that stuff. That will all score very well. Because as Dave and I sat in on the conference call, I think a lot of the communities that were on there were very concerned with having enough time to turn the projects around. This is a 3-year program, so a lot of those communities, I'm guessing, will probably default to the second year, which will give them a little bit more time to prepare. Not to say that there's not communities out there like Oscoda that are ready to go this year, but the fact that there's $10 million available for 2020, and basically you're essentially ready with the phase and estimates and all that stuff. Again, I think then the next step is to secure as many points as you can. Will be up to you on the amount of local match that you want to put forward.
Does your firm keep in contact with Dave regarding little reminders of some of these deadlines?
Yes.
February 4, February.
Dave and I are trading emails nearly every other day, making sure what's needed, whatever. If he hears of something new, he's letting us know. If we hear of something new, we're letting him know.
You could send him a Valentine for the 14th.
You're right. You're right.
Nice touch.
Put it on a package of chocolates.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yep.
Just one other couple things, just a point of clarity on the storm water user rate study.
Yes.
That's on the Mission Street, not the Missile Street.
Well, they asked that a couple. It is on Mission. Okay. Because Mission and Missile come together there, so yes, okay.
Mission Street.
I'll clean that up.
Plan. And as far as the Consumers Energy Plan Award, they have that every year? Or is that something just for this
Do
year?
they have it every year, Sam? Yeah.
Okay, because I think you're right. I think going for the land side
Mm-hmm.
is our better bet, because right now for our bike path, we've been informed by MDOT as it relates to the TAB grant that they aren't considering our application because we're only at the 20% level, which is the minimum.
Right.
But they're saying it's not competitive, so
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't qualify.
Right.
So we need to, what they emphasized at our meeting last Thursday, along with the problems with Foot Village, is the funding. So we need to come up with some more money for that.
Right.
What I
Along
was
with reducing the cost of the project.
right,
So.
right, and so by staying on the south side of the River Road, that reduces the
And that's
cost.
what Bruce and I talked about today, trying to minimize the cost, and we think with the fact that it's about a 9-foot paved shoulder there now, that we can get still another few feet in front of the property off of the paved shoulder, And then we probably, in a couple of areas, there are some residences or businesses that come out fairly close to the road. We might have to look at a design exception in there, which is acceptable to MDOT, because we've done it elsewhere, where you put some up additional signing or whatever, that the paved trail might go from the 10-foot requirement to down to an 8-foot for a 100-foot stretch or whatever. So the savings that you're gonna have in asphalt with a narrower trail will pick up, the cost of the signs and all that stuff. So we're running through the numbers right now. We think it should be just a wash, and we can be able to get it there. It relieves MDOT's concern of, instead of going up through the village, back behind there, nobody's gonna follow that. This way, they should stay on the trail. And obviously, it should appease Desi's and the dam store by not being right in front of their property.
Which Bruce?
Bruce Boland.
Bruce Cadsman's the one.
Bruce is the next one that we're gonna, but we wanted to get the road commission on board first, that they're okay for us being in that side of the right of way. Then we're gonna go to Bruce Casban and his staff in Lansing to identify which, or if any, design exceptions we might need in advance, and show them, and Bruce knows that he's accepted those in the past, as far as narrower path widths or whatever. So to get that through their process before we revise the entire plan packet and submit that.
Because MDOT, the way they conveyed it was they were not amenable to a narrower width. Even though they stated things need to be done to AASHTO standards, when those AASHTO standards were presented to them at the Thursday meeting, they still wanted wider.
And again, we might be able to make it, but again, we can show Bruce, and Bruce has accepted narrow paths in the past for legitimate reasons. And I mean, we can't just automatically just say the whole stretch is going to be narrow. We got to have, and again, like I said, there's only two, whether they're residences or cottages or whatever, that come out close to the road. And I think if we can get the paved portion down, but we might not be able to get the 2-foot shoulder, the 14-foot width through there. That would be the concern. So, but the staff back at the office is working through that right now to see what we can fit through there, and then, like I said, we'll present that back to the township and to the road commission to make sure they're all good with it before we take it to Bruce and Lansing. And then we're still communicating with the Forestry Service to see what, if anything, they can do on the tree removals, and whether they can sell the trees for more than what it's going to cost to take them down, and all that good stuff. So
That would be a significant amount of money
to reduce the cost,
reduce.
which then will cut your percentage
Right.
just by the mathematics.
And just one other point on this letter. I don't know if you'd submitted this letter, consumers already.
No, that's just a draft all ready to go. We just brought it along. It's
Okay.
still, there's a few blanks that we got to fill in.
Yeah, and one correction that I think you need to make is on the legal name. It should be Charter Township of Oscoda,
Okay.
to distinguish us
Yes.
from a general law
Mhm.
township.
But it's a form, so there's no need for township letterhead or anything like that. It's just a form submittal that's due on the form.
Can I layer on to
Mm-hmm.
Bill's suggestion? Having lived here, people get really screwed up about Oscoda Township and Oscoda County.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe underneath that Charter Township of Oscoda, Iosco County.
Iosco County.
Yeah. Otherwise, they're going to be thinking we're talking about Mayo or something like
Yep.
that. So
I totally agree. Anything else?
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rick.
Okay, recabling and the phone system at Township Hall.
Yes. So last meeting, we had a significant discussion about this topic, and I had promised you that we would be looking at a cutover date for the Township Hall to the new internet connection coming up, and so it is. So last week I scheduled it, and for those of you who actually work at Township Hall, you received an email from me indicating that tomorrow, over the lunch break between noon and 1, we will switch everybody over at Township Hall to the new internet connection. We're going to be on basically trying it out, just sort of making sure that all the bugs have been worked out, but we are quite confident at this point from the vendor who's been doing quality of service and bandwidth tests since I reported to you before that they were powering it up permanently for the first time, that everything is going well, and I just want us to build up the confidence that I think we'll want to have in that connection before we then add the new VoIP phone system. And that would be a future date. So there it is.
Thank you.
Tim, have you ever worked with this company that's going to provide the equipment before?
ATI? No, I have not. The township had been in touch with them many times, apparently, long before I was ever on the board.
Is it a separate company that installs this?
There are two separate companies that are sister companies. One is responsible for the service, like the internet, the fiber maintenance, and all that. The other focuses purely on wiring and cabling and things like that, which we did last year. So we were working with that company for the physical cabling and rewiring portion. Now that we're kicking over into the internet service, we're now going to be working with the other company, which is officially known as ATI.
And both of these companies are brand new to you?
To me, yeah, absolutely. I have no prior knowledge of either one of them.
Okay.
Yeah, they came to me through Bob Stalker and through Alipsidis, and I think they had even reached out to Ann at one point when she worked here. So there's some long
Okay.
communication with people that was before me. That's it.
Update on the Michigan Launch Initiative.
So our discussion at last meeting was that hopefully there was going to be an announcement today. That has been postponed. So the original January 2nd and January 22nd and January 27th, we will, I'll be able to provide an update when I have a future date as far as when there will be an announcement. So there is an agenda item later on in the meeting associated with the corroborating the intent for the township to have the board to have both myself and Todd go down to Cape Canaveral. I did receive an email this afternoon from Gary Kellen, and he was reaching out to representatives of MAMA to be able to understand if there would be room to take 2 representatives from the MEDC down to Cape Canaveral as well. So I found that promising because prior to that, we were kind of in a disconnect on who was assigned to the from the MEDC on this project. So I was happy to hear that this afternoon.
All right, on the, got to add one here regarding a meeting between Eagle, the township, and the Need Our Water Group that occurred last Friday. They've had some management changes in there, which look promising. And they also provided a lot of information regarding new test results that are coming back from their monitoring systems. And they're going to do another round of testing through several wells that they tested in the past, residential wells, so they can collect in more data to see how things have transpired over time. So it seemed like a lot of good action coming from Eagle at this point. Anybody have anything else? All right, then on to reports. Request for police vehicle.
All right, so your packet contains an email from the police chief as well as specifications for the requested Chevy Tahoe police vehicle. Police vehicles have been extremely difficult for municipalities to obtain, as evidenced by the 3rd police vehicle ordered last May 2019, having an anticipated delivery date of March 23rd, 2020. So as indicated by the police chief, the 2020 four-wheel drive Tahoe is in stock and ready for immediate delivery by Berger Chevrolet, which is a My Deal GM dealer, for $36,546. Police chief has also confirmed that the USDA Rural Development will allow the township to apply the previously approved $18,900 grant from 2019 to the Tahoe being requested for approval. Approving this request would allow the township to complete the vehicle purchases on the capital improvements plan for the police department by the first quarter of 2020. This request for the police vehicle requires township board approval.
Comments? Is there a motion?
This USDA grant, 18,000, was that written up for the automobile that was ordered
Last May.
so long ago? You can switch to a different car?
You can.
Okay.
They don't want to, I mean, the rural development doesn't want us to lose out on the grant. So basically, it was already approved, but we have to show them we purchased the vehicle. And we can't show that yet. So that's why we want to get this vehicle that is for immediate delivery. And the police chief called all of the dealerships on the My Deal state contract list, and they were the only dealer with a police vehicle ready for immediate delivery.
So in March, when the 2018 ordered vehicle is delivered, hopefully, we would have to pay the full shot.
Correct.
Can't get a second grant from USDA.
Hey, we're trying. We always try with rural development. Last year, we got one. 18, we didn't. So, and we try for multiple. They're also the ones that gave us the grant. They paid 55% of the MDTs, which was even more. That was more than a vehicle. So, we keep putting in those applications.
Well, it sounds like if these vehicles are that difficult to come by, we better move on it quickly. It's the only one available to.
Why are they so hard to get?
Ford's behind. We have a lot of Ford Explorers in demand. So.
Or we have more crooks in Michigan, so we need more cars.
I don't know.
Okay.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the 2020 Tahoe police vehicle from Berger Chevrolet in the amount of $36,546.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Request to sell 3 police vehicles on bid corp.
All right, so that same email from the police chief details the plan to sell 3 Ford Police utility vehicles on bid corp. The sale of these vehicles on bid corp would not happen until both the Chevy Tahoe and Ford Explorer, ordered last May of 2019, are in operation by the police department. The current practice is to split the proceeds of the sale of these vehicles with Oscoda Township based on the percentage detailed in the 2020 Shared Services Agreement. Oscoda for 2020 is 20.4%. So if the vehicles were sold for $10,000, they would get $2,040. This request requires Township Board approval.
Comments? Is there a motion?
Yep, I will move that we approve the sale of the 3 Ford police utility vehicles on bid corp.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. 2020 appropriations adjustment for the police vehicle.
All right, so this kind of gets to Mr. Byer's question before, associated with the $18,900 USDA Rural Development Grant for 2019 helps offset the net cost of the Tahoe to the township. The 2020 appropriations for Police Fund 207 must be increased to accommodate the purchase of 2 vehicles in 2020 instead of the originally planned 1 vehicle. We're not buying more vehicles, it's basically the different year in which we plan to buy a vehicle, in which we are actually going to buy the vehicle. The hope through last December was that the township would still receive delivery of the Ford Explorer in 2019, and the expense could be booked back to the 2019 appropriations for Police Fund 207. With a new delivery date of March 2020, the township will need to book the Ford Explorer and the Chevy Tahoe to the 2020 appropriations for Police Fund 207. Requesting the Township Board approve an increase to 2020 appropriations for the Police Fund 207 by $36,546 for line 207 000-981.000 equipment vehicles, increasing 2020 appropriations for Police Fund 207 from $1,244,778 up to $1,281,324.
Comments? We have a motion?
I'll move to approve the 2020 appropriations increase for Fund 207 in the amount of $36,546 for purchase of police vehicle.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call?
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. 2020 appropriations adjustment for trackless sidewalk snow machine.
All right, so based on the approval from the Township Board at the January 13th meeting, your packet contains the signed purchase order for Bell Equipment. The board also decided to postpone the adjustments to the 2020 appropriations for the 4 different funds affected until the appropriate amount from the DDA Fund 248 could be determined. Based on my discussions with the treasurer, the $8,000.01 figure could be contributed from the DDA Fund 248 towards the purchase of the trackless MT7. Based on the action item for the trackless MT7 and snow blower attachment from the January 13th Township Board meeting, I'm requesting the board increase 2020 appropriations to the general fund, Township Hall, grounds, line 101265, 980.000, equipment, up to $47,438, increasing total general fund appropriations up to $3,199,218. Requesting the board increase 2020 appropriations to the public improvement fund, line 245 980.000, equipment, up to $98,938, increasing total 2020 public improvement fund appropriations up to $98,938. Requesting the board increase 2020 appropriations to the property operations and maintenance fund, line 236 266 980.000, equipment up to $48,938, increasing total 2020 property O&M fund 236 up to $643,298. These 2020 appropriation increases to the fund DDA Fund 248, General Fund 101, Public Improvement Fund 245, and the Property O&M Fund 236 require Township Board approval.
Comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. I was a little troubled, and I'm sorry I wasn't able to be here at the last meeting when this was discussed. But I did watch the meeting, and when this was all done, I was concerned that our treasurer had said that we have a very specific amount, $49,534.78 from the DDA fund, so that we could effectively divide the cost 4 ways, 25% roughly for each fund. As it turns out, as we see in this breakdown today, there's only $8,000 available in the DDA fund. So I'm sorry that Ms. McGuire isn't here to answer this question, but I'm troubled how the treasurer, who's the one that writes the checks for the township, wouldn't know. I could understand if it was a small amount, but what caught my attention when I was watching this online was that roughly a year ago or so, when we were, disbanding the DDA and going through the finances, at that time, there was roughly $40-some thousand in the 248 account. And when she mentioned that we had $49,534, I didn't quite understand how that amount could have grown when we've actually been paying some bills out of that fund over this past year. So that's what caught my attention on this. And then then we had to postpone the details so you could finalize what the amounts were. It troubles me that our treasurer who writes the checks wouldn't know how much money is in the account. And she must have looked up something, because this is a very specific amount that she mentioned. So it was troubling to me when I watched this online, and like I say, she's not here to answer that question. So, but I know, when I balance my checkbook, I get the bank statement, and then if it says I have $5,000 in there, I don't just go and write a check for $5,000, because I have to look and see if there's checks outstanding. And if that was the case, if there were checks outstanding, that needs to be reconciled in our accounts. So that was a little troubling to me when I saw that at the meeting.
You said it yourself, so I'm paraphrasing you, that she seemed to come on very strong with that amount. So I think you're trying to be nice about it, but before we slam her too much, we should wait till she's here and so she can explain that. But my sense 2 weeks ago is that she was confident that the 48 was the right number.
Right.
What do we have?
Yeah.
Sorry. So what amount are we using out of the DDA then?
$8,000.01.
Okay.
My view with your concern is that the trouble with it is that the assumption that the $48,000 is in error. Not for me, don't quote that $48,000 specifically, but the two amounts were expressed at the last meeting. I don't know. I guess the recommendation of $8,000 is your assumption that makes you assume that the larger number was wrong, but I don't think that it is.
So you're saying there'd be another 41,000 left in the DDA account? Okay.
And
that's good.
And so the two numbers that were presented last meeting, one was based off of an observation of the checking account that gets reconciled monthly. So that's the checking account reconciled against our accounting records, which I'm confident in. The other was a reverse calculation based upon ending fund balance of 2018 based upon the audit, plus revenues minus expenditures, which is a logical formula to follow. I was concerned by the discrepancy in numbers as well. So I had looked at it in the ensuing days, the following days, and came up with something. The revenues that Mr. Schaefer presented, I agreed with. The expenditures that Mr. Schaefer presented, I agreed with. That left me to think that something had to be differing in the fund balance, the basis, the original starting point. A conversation that Mr. Schaefer and I had this week, I believe there's a different understanding now as to what fund balance number maybe to use as a starting point. Is that the discussion we had in your office relative to a different fund, but we were running against the same trouble and troubling to calculate. There was a discrepancy between fire fund 206 for equipment and what we had in the bank and we're reconciling to. And the result of that conversation was not taking fund balance is made up of not just cash, but investments, depending on the fund, could be infrastructure. So just because fund balance is this, you have to consider what is made up of that fund balance.
So are you saying? So now I'm confused. We do or we don't have $41,000 to apply towards this purchase?
I can't, off the top of my head, give you an exact figure, but I would say near $40,000 than 8.
And you say the statements are reconciled monthly?
Correct.
So we should know within a month where we're at.
Exactly. I can tell you in November we didn't only have $8,000 in the DDA checking account. So
We only had $8,000?
we did not only have $8,000 in the checking account in November. There was a greater sum, closer to the sum of $40,000. So the calculation that was presented last week doesn't seem to be accurate, and that seems to be what the assumption that this conversation is based upon. So I think that's where it leads us to this point.
So if we go with this appropriation with the 4 funds, with $8,000 from the DDA, that means there should be a considerable amount of money left in the DDA fund.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020 appropriation adjustment to the DDA Fund 248, the General Fund 101, the Public Improvement Fund 245, and the Property Operation and Maintenance Fund 236, as detailed by Mr. Schaefer.
Support. Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed,
Yes, motion's passed. 2% COLA increase for all non-POLC township employees, effective 1/1/2020.
All right, so
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So based on discussions with the clerk and deputy clerk, they requested formal action from the township board to implement the 2% cost of living adjustment, or COLA, for the non-POLC township employees effective 1/1/2020, detailed in the 2020 appropriations. All of the COLA increases for the non-POLC township employees can be referenced within the 2020 compensation plan portion of the 2020 budget document. The 2% COLA is in line with POLC employees received effective 1/1/2020.
Based on legal discussions earlier today, there's not a requirement for the board to take action on this since it's a labor issue that was in our budget, 2020 budget. So there's no need for the board to take action unless the board desires to.
As long as the clerk has what they need.
As long as, and I told Mr. Weed, I was available to speak with the attorney, it turns out today, but I can speak with him, but yeah, as long as the basis is there for me to make the payment, the increase, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking to not,
Right.
make an expenditure of money outside the purview, the lines of the board, so.
So if we don't act on it tonight, the non-police employees do not get the cost of living allowance?
They do.
No,
It
they do.
was already
Automatically in the
set up
budget.
and
Okay. Okay.
okay. So is the board good on this, or?
Yeah,
As long as John has everything he needs.
Yeah, Mr. Nordine was concerned if that size satisfies his requirement.
All right, then recommendation from EIC concerning the Huron Shores Artisan Hall rentals.
All right. So as you can see in the draft 1/14/2020 Economic Improvement Committee meeting minutes contained in your packet, there was a recommendation that the Township Board remove the Huron Shores Artisan Hall, or HUSA, from the list of rentals and have the HUSA available for economic improvement purposes. The Economic Improvement Committee, or the EIC, also moved to hold the February 11th, 2020 meeting and future meetings in the HUSA. The HUSA has not been rented for the last 5 months since August of 2019. From July 2018 through January of 2020, a total of $3,550. It's a combination of $1,800 from 2018 and $1,750 in 2019 have been booked to the DDA Fund 248 for rental income associated with the HUSA. That comes out to just over $186 per month in rental income over the past 19 months. At $250 per day for a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday rental, or $200 for Monday through Thursday rental, the HUSA is being rented less than once per month. This indicates weak demand to rent a 2-story, 1,855 square foot building as an event center for the community. The plumbing in the HUSA has been winterized due to no rental reservations on the book for 2020. Therefore, the EIC has recommended that the HUSA be used for economic improvement purposes, meetings with developers, potential investors in our community, and local constituents that drive economic improvement for Oscoda Township. The HUSA is to be used as a sales office or showroom for the community to have large-scale maps, real estate information, investment information readily available to refer to during meetings and presentations. The EIC understands that the HUSA has been listed for sale for $295,000 and would relocate monthly meetings when the building is sold. Given the request for the change in the use, the board should note that the EIC is still aggressively pursuing offers for purchase through Real Estate One, as evidenced by the recent use of Matterport technology to create a virtual tour of the HUSA listing online. This will help interested parties understand the extensive renovations completed in the HUSA and provide them with a better sense of the actual space and possibilities it holds prior to conducting an on-site walkthrough of the building. I provided 2 links in the board packet within my narrative, and those 2 links show an updated video tour on the listing, and then the Matterport technology can be viewed on there as well. That's the first building we have for sale with the Matterport technology, so basically everything has to get cleared out, and then a videographer goes through, and you can click through and walk through the building virtually online. So it's pretty cool to go on there and be able to see that, and so that has been included in the marketing materials for the sale of the building.
Comments?
does this mean Todd's office would effectively move from Township Hall to the HUSA?
We got a little bit of work to do to be able to get it over there. Obviously, we want to be able to get internet access over there, so that would be, on at a future date. But anytime we have developers or investors coming in the community, we want to be able to hold meetings there. It's much more of a showroom than my office or Township Hall. So that's where we want to be able to show them some of the development opportunities and start there and have the meeting there.
The EIC right now meets in your office
Here.
here, okay. How do we advertise other rental properties like Warrior Pavilion? What are we doing there?
A lot of those, can tell you right now, June, July, and August, the weekends are already booked up. Tammy manages those. It's a link on our website as far as the rental information with Tammy's contact information. And yes, those weekends are booked in the summer already.
So basically, the answer to my question is, how do we market that is on our website. Is that right?
On our website, yeah.
And do we market the availability of the Artisan Hall the same way?
Yeah, it's actually on there. There's a listing for the Husso with different property information, and as well as links to all the forums, just like the Warrior Pavilion, as far as what's on there.
We had other advertising for it, such as Facebook, in addition to what Township normally does.
Mm-hmm. Good, because I think because it's new and people aren't used to it, it probably needs a little, well, maybe I'm too late with this, but it would need a little more of a push and publicity than Warrior Pavilion, because people aren't used to it and maybe haven't been in it. How often does the EIC meet? Monthly?
Monthly.
You're going to have to reconnect the plumbing and heat?
It's on the lowest you can put that building on is 60 degrees, Martin?
60 degrees. As low as you can heat that, or as low as you can turn the furnace down on that building.
Okay.
You cannot turn it off. 60 degrees. Whoever put that furnace in there and approved that furnace to go in there, a building that you can't turn off, is beyond me. Mm-hmm. We're paying for heat that we're not even utilizing the building for.
Somebody maybe has made a determination that lower than 60 degrees is dangerous?
I had the company in there.
Yeah.
When I was renting that building, Jim, I had the company in there because I couldn't turn it any lower than 60.
Yeah.
We had the technician from the manufacturer says, that's the lowest you can go. Change your furnace. This is brand new. I'm changing nothing.
Yeah.
But I'm not the one that was in.
Did he say that's the lowest you can go, or that's the lowest you should go?
Lowest you can go. I want it to go 45. Mm-hmm. Cannot.
Well, I personally think this is a great idea to have the Economic Improvement Committee and have a facility where they can hold their meetings and where Mr. Dickerson can meet with developers and things right in the heart of our downtown and bring them into that building. Maybe that'll spur a sale, if nothing else. But I think this is a great idea rather than to sit and wait for, maybe have a couple more rentals during the year, but actually put the building to use where we have somebody in there on a regular basis. I think this is a smart move on our part.
Did the EIC or you come to any idea as to when this would start to be used?
So the next EIC meeting is the 11th of February.
Okay.
And then we are working to be able to, in the downtown redevelopment strategy, it talks about being able to have meetings with the downtown business owners, so that is where we would want to be able to hold that. Last year we had a downtown summit that was held at the Warrior Pavilion. We would be envisioning meeting with the downtown business owners in downtown at the Huron Shores Artisan Hall.
So what I'm hearing is that phone and internet aren't going to preclude you from starting to use this. There's already everything else, like, of course, heat and water and restrooms and all that. So, okay, I get it. Thank you.
So if we do this and use it for the EIC and what you're describing, that stops any rental. Somebody wants to use the site for a wedding reception or some other thing, they will not be able to do that.
Yeah, that was the recommendation by the EIC.
I'm confused why. what I'm looking for is an explanation of why both uses could not be done. Maybe there's a good reason, other than the recommendation from the EIC board.
They're gonna have the interior of the building, like he just said, the things are
Maps
gonna be
and-
set up inside of it for, specifically to appeal to developers.
And it's a kind of a reconfiguration that's not easily changed or taken down, right?
Right, and then you've got where, after the event happens, if there's a bunch of cleaning or whatever that needs to be done, but yet we have developers who want to see something, then we've got a conflict.
So my thoughts are, it seems to me the determination of this board has been to sell that building. That's at least would be my preferred route with it. Until the time that we are able to sell it, I would rather capture money, albeit however small, than forego that money that we could have in rental income and then have associated costs to run an office out of there. Telephone, internet, increased heat, although we can already keep it at 60, electricity, water, sewer, and wear and tear on a building that we're trying to sell. Especially when there's space within Township Hall. Even, I wouldn't be in agreement with this, but even at the Awney Medical Center where the previous economic development or community development office existed, I just don't see the need. And then talking about incurring extra expenses. Those are some of the reasons I don't think that we should go ahead with making this change. Mr. Byer raised the question multiple times before the economic improvement director was hired about office location, whether we would have satisfactory housing or office space for the position. And we were assured at the time that sharing an office was no inconvenience, no problem. But now we're talking about attaching costs to that and foregoing rental income at the same time. So those are some of my thoughts on the matter.
Well, we really didn't have rental income.
Well, I mean,
There were people who were looking at the building for a while. We've discussed this at meetings before. Mr. Gajewski was involved with it also, in dealing with, in working with this building, and the demand for the building in general just wasn't there as rental.
I agree. That's why I'd like to sell the building ultimately. I don't want to run this in perpetuity as a rental. But on average, over the last 2 years, 2018, 2019, we've averaged a low average, to take the lower of the two numbers, $1,750. Now, again, that's not sustainable. That's not something I'm saying we, the township, should make a business model out of. But it's $1,750 that we can gain while we try to sell the building. And then you're foregoing that and bringing on extra costs as well. So it's a swing.
I don't, John, I see where you're coming from, but I don't see where you're gonna gain anything. By the time you pay your insurance and everything else, that $750 is all gone. You're in the hole. You're not washing or nothing. You're in the hole.
But we're going to go further in the hole, but for what need?
We might be able to make a sale out of going, you might have to spend a little bit to get rid of it.
And if you bring developers in, if you have a rental that conflicts when a developer needs to come in, but if that developer can come in and you can showcase things in that building, because our township hall is not conducive to showcasing. You can showcase something in there, and that leads to sales of some other properties or rentals of other properties or a business coming in or something like that. The economic benefit far outweighs what little we would ever get off of renting that building.
I see that logic, and I've gone through that logic in contemplating this, but what I come to is that those possibilities, those realizations are so far removed that this is $1,700 that we've gotten. That's realistic to expect that we could hopefully trend to continue on that. The possibility that we might entice a developer to potentially, have a project that we would then capture tax dollars off of and better the community by jobs is realistic potentially, but it's just so far removed. There's so many ifs built into that. When I'd rather just continue with the more realistic or reliable $1,700 a year. And to think that moving the recruitment efforts to the artisan hall would be the determining factor as well. I have hopes that we will entice a developer, and I would hope we could do it as we are.
I guess I'm more optimistic. I feel that we're not really losing much here in the $1,700, $1,800 a year, or it wasn't even per year, it was over more than a year. I feel that what we're doing is we're taking a beautiful building and we're using it as opposed to letting it sit empty. I think that says a lot. I think that's important to me. Now, to your point about, additional costs, well, I guess it goes back to something I've said to my kids, the most expensive item you'll ever buy is the item you buy and never use. But at least if you used it, you got some value out of it. And I feel like that's more of the viewpoint I'm taking here, is that we're not going to get in the way of the sale of the building. We're just trying to find a way to utilize something that we already own. We already have it. It is beautiful. It's well situated. And if people want to come in and if they're developers and they want to envision what downtown could look like and, what could be built around, what's available, have a discussion, it is better than with all due respect, Mr. Schaefer's conference table. But, which also then interrupts whatever he's in the middle of, just to have that meeting. Because we really don't have another, well, I guess we could go to Ani and do something over there. But that's not pretty either.
These things should have come up when we were talking about how we were going to pitch developers when Mr. Byer asked this very question months ago. That just rubs me a bit, I guess, in all of it as well.
I don't know. I will say I don't think I didn't hear it or did hear it. This is all new to me. I mean, I just came up.
You mean my questions about?
No. I'm saying when he's saying he's being rubbed, and I'm like, well, I didn't hear anybody say, let's not say something. I mean, I didn't hear anything like that. I think this is a legitimate idea that came out since Todd's been hired. And I don't know. I mean, I'm just taking it at the same speed and rate as you are, but I don't feel rubbed about it. I think it's a good opportunity in my mind. So like I said, I feel like I'm being more optimistic about this, but
so
over to you.
Sure. The rub I reference is the inappropriateness of the current accommodations, that Mr. Schaefer's office isn't appealing enough for a developer to come into, or Ani, or these existing things. We had the discussion of, are we going to have the office space available for this individual to do their job? Yeah. And it was, absolutely, we will. And now it's, well, Township Hall is not really great for pitching developers or Anis, and that thing, we had that conversation already, and it was, no, that will work. And
But
now
since
it's,
that time, we hired somebody in, and that person has come up with a plan, started working on a plan that could help to showcase, to sell Oscoda for better economic improvement, so that it wouldn't have come up prior to that. He still does have that office to use in Township Hall, but why not utilize another asset we have as a method of showcasing that? Kind of like when a housing developer builds in a neighborhood and they put up a model home, they put up something that they can showcase and show the potential, and storyboards along the way, a bunch of information things, a place to sit down and discuss stuff. I think is highly appropriate for this. I think this is a good start to his plan. And I think if we don't allow this, and for a developer to come in and see a potential of something to entice them to want to come here, and then development doesn't happen, then we shouldn't be faulting the person we hired to handle that job, because we've just pretty much nixed what he felt was a way to make things better.
When I agreed, we all voted, when I agreed with my vote that, his office could be at Township Hall, it wasn't because I thought about him bringing in a horde of people to talk to or do big presentations. It was simply a place for him to work out of. And I never anticipated that he would have every meeting out of Mr. Schaefer's office, just because he's got a job to do too, and it's not Todd's job. But I didn't also at the same time think of this other opportunity, but I happen to like it.
I just think that may be short-sighted on our part.
I don't know, I don't think so. I don't think it
Some of
mattered
you
one
have
way or the other.
probably seen through what I was getting at when I was asking how it was publicized for rental and the options and so forth. I have a concern that it wasn't pushed very hard for a new thing where it needed to really be pushed. And at the risk of making some of you upset, which will happen, even worse is that it wasn't publicized very much, really low key. Even worse, I have no proof. I hope that it wasn't purposely given a low key treatment, aggressively not publicized. And I just hope I'm wrong in that, but I think we're giving up on that too quick.
Mr. Byer, I want to make sure I'm clear on what you're trying to say. So are you saying you're not sure whether we've put...
The original purpose was a facility for community events, a variety of community events. Whatever, a quilt show, I keep saying wedding receptions, but there are many other things. And now all of that is going down the drain. And the money that it would bring, I'm just not convinced that it was pushed that hard for something new that needed to be pushed hard. I mean, if it was advertised equal with Warrior Pavilion, that wouldn't satisfy me.
So, when you were the supervisor and on the DDA board, as mandated by the DDA Act, and you were involved with the purchase of this building, what was the plan for advertising? What was the plan for managing the building?
I don't know if the DDA at that point, they were just more or less focused on acquiring it, number one. And number two is how to rehab it and the financing of it. I think that any plan to push it and publicize it was down the list of ways behind the things that I've just cited. And
So would you have expected that plan to have been fully developed by the time the building was ready to open?
I don't know if I do accept that because there was a bit of a hurry to get the building and get it underway, and after you purchase it, it looked terrible. It was one of the worst looking buildings in town.
So after
you don't want that to just
after
sit
3.5 years of that building from purchase to the time it opened, you don't think they should have been ready with the whole plan of how to manage and market that building?
Yeah, they maybe had a plan. I was one member of it. I wasn't the leader of it, but the point is that they were terminated before they really had a chance to do that.
You mean 6 months after the building opened, they still were terminated prior to the ability to be able to establish that plan?
Well, they were doing grand openings, and there was definitely efforts to publicize it and get people in, open house, stuff like that. They were doing some things. But then when the whole organization was terminated and Ann Richards was let go, all of those efforts kind of went down.
They didn't
the drain.
have a plan. And while I was supervisor mandated to be on that board, and I've gone over this before and I've written reports on it, they didn't have a plan. They said, we're just figuring this out as we go along. They didn't research into other places. It wasn't until after it opened before they finally came up with some sort of document to be able to rent the building, because they didn't do it beforehand. At no point was the DDA board handling this building appropriately in order for it to be utilized to its maximum potential. And so, after the DDA dissolved, it was left for the township to do this, and it's cost us an enormous amount of man-hours in order to manage this building, even just off of a few rentals. Again, negating the price that we were getting for this. We had people that were interested. I'm repeating this that we had talked about over the last year and a half about this thing. We had advertised. People were coming and inquiring about it.
Advertise.
Nobody wanted to rent it except for just a few people. It was not conducive for rentals of parties. People weren't going to pay that money for a baby shower when they could do it for free in somebody's home. It's not big enough for a wedding reception because it's divided at 2 levels. Your party's split at 2 separate levels. People didn't like it as a rental hall. They liked Warrior Pavilion. It's 1 level and it has a good view.
Well,
Which is what led to us selling the building because it wasn't feasible for us to manage the building because we are not event coordinators. We are not here to manage the leasing of buildings to people because that costs us so much more to manage that than we get back in return. Warrior Pavilion's a special case because we didn't have to pay for it. This building cost a phenomenal amount.
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I'm not sure it's true, but let's say it is, that the former DDA didn't have a plan to publicize it. Again, I'm not sure of that, but let's, for argument's sake, let's say you're right on the money. Why didn't once the old DDA board and the DDA director were gone, why did we not come up with some way to publicize this?
Did you have some ideas for doing that? Where is this magically going to come from if it's not coming from people like you?
Well, we just didn't talk about it, the 7 of us, not just Jim Byer.
I think we talked about it quite a bit. Didn't we discuss stuff like this at work sessions?
So in what John was saying, as far as using it for the new, for Todd, I did ask at least 3 times, where's this guy gonna use, what's he gonna use for headquarters? And I got mushy answers each time I brought it up. And answers like, well, I'll share my office supervisor but there was nothing specific that the guy was gonna have something that it was his and he didn't have to share with somebody. And now it's gradually gravitating to that building. And then if we do sell it, then we're right back to square one. What's Todd gonna do and where's he gonna be? So.
Yep, we'll come up with ideas then.
Okay.
Just like that came up after he was hired.
Okay, well,
I'd like to make a couple of comments, Aaron, if I could. Well, I had that building, Jim, for 6 or 8 months. I advertised the heck out of it. I got 3 rentals out of probably 12 people. Wasn't big enough for what we want. Okay? Another comment. I started in an office. I outgrew it 4 times. I moved. If I didn't do any of my work, I'd still be in a small office. Somebody that's starting to do work got to have a bigger office. Got to stop and think about that.
well, that's what I was thinking
When he
about
first
when I
come on
asked the
board,
question
he
3
didn't
times.
have- he
Where's
had
this
an
guy
office.
gonna be? You know,
He had an office. Now he's going to do something. He's doing something in the community. But we got to give him a bigger office.
I hear you.
Got to look at that.
But nobody would say that when I asked 3
Nobody-
times.
He had
We
my
got to see if
office.
he was going to do anything.
I said, he had
He
my
was here
office.
temporary.
I pulled my stuff out of there. He's got my office.
I invite the public to go look at the size of his office. Please do that.
That's got to do with anything, but okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to remove the Huron Shores Artisan Hall from the list of rentals for the purpose of being used for the economic improvement purposes.
Support. Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, no. Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
No,
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion passes. Water meter replacement and radio read installation proposals.
All right. So your packet contains a memo dated the 20th of January from the F&V project manager concerning water meter replacement, radio read installation proposals. The recommendation brought up in front of the board for approval seeks to purchase 1,142 meters and radio read units from Ferguson Waterworks. Purchase the necessary software from Ferguson Waterworks and contract with HydroCorp for the installation of the meters and radio read units for a total project cost of $349,708.52 in 2020 to be paid out of Water Fund 591-000-980.100 water meters capitalized. This total project amount comes to just under the $350,000 amount detailed in the 2020 capital improvement plan and the 2020 appropriations for the Water Fund 591. The board will note that 2020 is the first of 3 years planned for meter replacement and radio read units. With F&V obtaining all of the pricing on the 20th of January, still in the process of working with the township to formulate, the township attorney to formulate the professional services contract agreement with HydroCorp for the installation of meters and radio read units. This would be brought back in front of the township board for approval after legal review is performed by the township attorney. Project budget of $349,708.52 requires township board approval. So we have some representatives from F&V here tonight. What they brought me is the radio read unit. So this is going to be by the meter touchpad, and it installs, and basically we're going to be buying the software to be able to drive around, and the software, the unit within a van, will pick up the reads off of the meters within a half a mile. So, based on questions from the township board, are we going to have to move these meters from the back of the house to the side of the house to the front of the house? This thing picks up reads within a half a mile. So as long as the van can drive by within a half a mile, it can pick up the read and obtain the information automatically. Did I miss anything over there?
Any comments? Any questions? Anything you guys want to add? If you can come to the podium if you do.
Never mind.
Move the podium to him.
Yeah, right.
For efficiency's sake, this obviously from touching a meter reader to a pad to being within a half mile of it should improve efficiency and the need for manpower, human resources, whether that's human resources allocated somewhere else on a project or savings and cost. Overall efficiency should increase a lot, I would expect. I look forward to that.
And Kurt kind of detailed the plan of the thirds in an email that I sent out and printed out for you to understand those meters and how the plan to install those.
And I would just like to point out that I think this is a project we've talked about. I think when I was first appointed to the board here, we've been talking about this project for obviously a number of years, and I'm happy to see that we're finally going to put this into fruition. I think it'll, like John said, it'll make some more efficiency and some cost savings there, and I think I'm glad to see we're finally moving ahead with it. Take 3 years to implement the whole township on it, but we have to start somewhere, so.
Some roughly 3-4 years ago, when that topic came up, the reason we didn't move ahead with it, as I recall, was that there were problems with the software. It wasn't working well in other municipalities. I'm glad
Talking
that
about this for 7 years.
I'm glad that we worked
At
the
least
bugs
as I
out.
know of, and I believe it was talked about prior to that.
That's amazing. That's great. Well, I'm glad we've worked the bugs out, and we're able to move on. That's good.
Dave, did you have a chance or an occasion to, I think there's 8 references here, do you touch base with any of those?
I have not called the references on those. I have been working with F&V to get the model and all the information associated with what it is we're actually going to be installing.
This is a huge monetary expense, but we're going to vote on it tonight, so I guess it's too late to check on some of these references.
Doug, is this similar to what the Osable has? Is this similar to what the Osable has?
Kurt's better reference on this topic.
Okay.
Okay, send him up there.
Nice dodge.
So this is a different company. That Oscoda Township uses Census currently, and they use a different style of radio read. We chose to go with Neptune because the census meters that we have purchased for the township have had issues with it, and their software that they run with it has issues with it. The census representatives tell us that they are going to have a fix for this year. They're going to go to an Android-based system similar to what the Neptune software is. But at this point in time, it's too late. Neptune is a leader in this technology. It's been proven, and we're satisfied with this recommendation to the township at this time.
And you've mentioned before at some other meetings about Neptune. So, you briefed us before.
Regarding the reliability of the meters themselves, is my recollection. Just even absent the radio read, the meters that themselves are more reliable, or more accurate, or easy, less problematic.
Yeah, the census went to a plastic-based body and an ultrasonic reader that has a battery in it. That battery, when they initially released it, was supposed to last 10 years, and they've come to find out that maybe 7 years at the most. So by switching to Neptune, there's not a battery involved with it. It's a mechanical reader. It's a mechanical device. It generates its own power. There are batteries in the radio devices, and those have been proven to give us 10 years out of it. So there is some maintenance associated with that, but just like anything else, there always is. So.
Good.
Any other comments?
Not at this time, but I will have more. And I'm going to direct them to Doug.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the $349,708.52 for the water meter replacement and radio read installation project.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call?
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Manhole repairs on F41.
All right, so your packet contains a string of emails between the township, the Oscoda County Road Commission, and F&V operations staff to address the manhole repairs on F41. F&V has documented attempts to obtain quotes from other contractors, but the only quote obtained was for $4,500 from John Henry Excavating Incorporated to perform the needed manhole repairs to be paid out of the Sewer Fund 590-000-930.000 for repairs and maintenance. So repair requires township board approval.
Comments?
Will they be able to do this soon?
Yes.
Because it sounds to me like this could be a hazard on the road there.
It is, and so that it's going to require special permitting and confined space to be able to get in there and get the masonry work done.
I know we were only able to get one bid, but, we have a lot of experience with John Henry. He's always done a good job, and generally his bids are competitive, so I don't really have a problem with just the one bid.
And the one bid was not as a result of lack of trying,
No.
which, I mean, is worse than we try. It's not like we just didn't try to get a competitive bid.
Do we know what caused this problem? Douglas? Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Can't dodge us forever.
I'm Doug from F&B Operations. What was the question?
Manhole, what caused the problem to be destroyed?
What it looks like, there's no barrel block on the inside supporting the frame. The frame of the actual lid, it sits inside of the frame, and it's got a flange on the bottom. That flange is broken off. So, I don't know if they did it, if it's a county thing, whenever they did a rehab on the road, I don't know. And it's pretty, I don't think it was done right to me. But it is what it is at this point, so.
Is this a real safety hazard if somebody hits that and that pops up, or?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's right up against the curb, and that's where it's all broken out, and actually you can see the sewer, the trough, from the top of the roof. The right way to do it, in my opinion, would be getting an offset precast. It comes up on an angle, and then the whole frame sits on it.
Move it off.
But it wasn't done.
Which way did you move it, in or out?
Looks like it was moved out quite a ways from the curb. Well, maybe the original curb, I don't know if they moved it.
Which way would you move it? In or out?
Oh, we got a precast, offset precast, and we're good to go. But
More
that
towards the
didn't happen.
inside or more towards the outside?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
As long as the flange is supported, it doesn't matter which way you move it. But if they have to go by guidelines where the curb is from the property lines, whatever, I don't know. Any other questions?
Will you do me a favor?
Maybe?
And drive in Ottawa Drive, and at the intersection of Ottawa Court and Ottawa Drive, look at that manhole in the middle of the road. Tell me if you can get in it. That's destroyed also.
It's what?
County truck took the top rim, bent it right in the V. You won't get in that manhole. Just take a look at it, yeah.
Was this a
Just
snow?
before the pump station.
I already reported 2 of them this year, that's graders that hit, or plow trucks or whatnot, so I'll take a look at that and add it to my list.
You won't be able to get in it.
Any other comments?
Thank you, Doug.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, that we move that we approve the repairs on the manhole on F41, to repairs to be performed by John Henry for the amount not to exceed $4,500.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Utility easement with Central Michigan Railway Company.
All right, so your packet contains a $2,500 utility easement with Central Michigan Railway Company to be paid out of the Water Fund 591-000-974.000 capital improvement outlay. This easement is required to complete the Phase 2 water main extension project, and the $2,500 qualifies as a reimbursable expense for the USDA Rural Development Grant funds. This requires Township Board approval.
Comments?
Was there an amount figured into the budget for the Phase 2?
Yes, but we didn't, sometimes these come in a lot costlier.
Well, that's what I'm wondering, are we actually, we're saving some money then on this? Okay.
I make a motion, we approve the utility easement for $2,500 with Central Michigan Railway associated with the Phase 2 water main extension.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Weed, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call?
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Fire truck bids.
All right, so what you have, I brought hard copies and I emailed all of this out. This is from Pierce and Halt Fire associated with the fire truck bid. So we advertised, we sent the 98 pages worth of specifications to several different vendors. We got one sealed bid last Friday. And what you will see on there in that proposal dated January 20th, one Pierce Saber top mount pumper per enclosed. The contract price is $545,283. That's on the first page. The second page kind of details out options to pay for it. So last time we purchased a fire truck was in 2013. The millage was not into effect dedicated to fire department equipment. And so right now, the fund balance and the participation of Oscoda Township to help pay the 100% upfront payment option instead of $545,000, the 100% upfront payment option is $529,019. That is the lowest. About $2,000 more is to put down $400,000 down as the payment option, or a third option, again, besides the contract price, is to do the chassis payment option. So those are detailed in that, as well as the insurance associated with the Halt Fire and Pierce. All of that liability insurance is provided in there, as well as the exceptions and clarifications. And in there, it says Pierce Manufacturing and Halt Fire are proud to announce that the provided proposal has no exceptions or clarifications and complies with the advertised specifications 100%. So what they're saying in there is that they meet all 98 pages worth of specifications in their proposal. And then what you also see in there is a deposit and company in there associated with the Pierce Saber fire pumper. So all of that is in there. I have a detailed binder if anybody wants to look further into it. But the sealed bid is to be able to, I know this was a placeholder item, I'd like to activate this and be able to move forward with accepting the Pierce as what we're going to move forward with. There is a second item on there that will go over the different payment options and how to make that happen precisely.
Comments?
You got this in stock, right, Bill?
There is a 8 to 10 month build time frame. So the board approves, it's going to be 8 to 10 months before it's actually ready for delivery.
And in contrast to the earlier conversation about the Ford police car, this is because this is a custom build, not because we're waiting for something stock to come off an assembly line.
Correct.
Yeah, good.
Absolutely, sir.
Hi, my name is Bill DeGette. I'm the Pierce salesman working for Halt Fire, and I just wanted to say it just exactly what you said about the police car. You said we found a police car, and generally that comes here and they put in the radio and the MDT and so on, and the police officer carries everything he needs when he gets to a call. On the other hand, the fire truck needs to have what we need to fight a fire on that, and I really want to commend the committee. We worked several meetings, and Pierce has, and other manufacturers as well, but there are over 11,000 options that you can put on a fire truck. So very, very different than a police car. And the committee that we met with looked at the kind of fires you have, the problems that may arise with the air base, with airplanes, and everything they said was, what do we need for this community? What's the best thing we need? And I've been with other departments that have lots of money and say, what do we want? I did not hear that once from the committee. So we met several times, and everything is, what can we do to get the best truck for this community? So I was really, really proud of that committee.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we go ahead with the purchase of the Pierce fire truck as described in the packet.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Fire truck payment method.
All right, so as I described in that packet, there are 4 different prices. And obviously, the best price is associated with paying the truck 100% upfront. And Oscoda Township, I've been working with the superintendent, and what was presented and approved by the Oscoda Township Board is to pay upfront the 24.5% of the truck up front. And you know, Oscoda Township has a vested interest in being able to maximize the purchasing power of both of the communities and pay their portion of the truck up front. How this is related is the annual shared services contract between Oscoda and Oscoda, and basically they agree on a monthly basis to pay a certain monthly amount, and that would eliminate that practice and pay the entirety of it up front. Based on my calculations, we have enough in the Fire Department Equipment Fund 206 to be able to pay cash associated 100% upfront. That option of 100% upfront payment is $529.19, significantly lower than the contract price of $545,283. So that is what I am recommending to the board, to be able to go with the 100% upfront payment option.
It's $529, $19, not 19 cents?
$19.
Okay.
$529,019.
Okay.
As I'm reading this, I mean, you have 3 options here, but it would appear to me that there's really only 2. The last option, we put down 400,000, then by the end of March, we'd have to pay the balance. But I don't see where that's much different than paying for the whole thing up front right now.
So we get the millage money dispersed by the county. Last year, it was right in the middle, between the 13th and the 15th is when we saw the large amount of the projected $257,000. So that's why that option comes into play. Basic timing, if we weren't able to use the current resources, if we had to wait for the county to distribute the millage money associated, the 0.9 mils associated with the Fire Department Equipment Fund 206, that's why that was built into that.
I see. Okay. Well, we have sufficient funds.
Yes.
We're sure of that,
I
based on my previous concern.
Yes, I wanted to be able to touch base. We opened the bids Friday. at 1 o'clock. I was not able to touch base with the treasurer. She was off sick today, so between Friday afternoon, Monday, I wanted to be able to corroborate that story. Again, I'm using the same method as the Fund 248 as far as the beginning balance of 2019, add in the approximately 257,000 receipted last year minus expenditures. That is there. The only clarification I was trying to obtain from the treasurer is the liquidity associated with the investments for Fund 206 and how that is pooled with the rest of the investments. That's the part that I was trying to corroborate with the treasurer.
My view after speaking with Dave is the money, we have enough money to make the obligation. As Mr. Schaefer just said, its liquidity is the one thing to be determined.
So what's needed tonight? Which way we want to go?
The
Which
100,
plan?
what I'm asking, what I'm recommending is the 529,019 option.
Right.
If that is not a possibility, I would definitely, be emailing the board once I'm able to corroborate that story with the treasurer, and bring it back on February 10th if needed at the next meeting. But based on what I'm able to calculate, the funds are there. I just need to corroborate liquidity of those investments.
So in my view, we're talking about a lot of money. And I appreciate that the community's put a high value on fire safety specifically and police also via millage proposals on the ballot. So the community voted for this fire equipment millage, which allows us to pay for cash, to save money and pay cash for equipment, which is wise. Privately, that's a wise thing to do to avoid debt and the interest that comes with it. The committee, like I said, via ballot proposals has enabled the township to do that, which I think is obviously the savings of buying something with cash up front is substantial. So I think that's a great thing. My one concern with paying cash is with such a big cash up front, 100%, with such a big cost and it being custom made and the time frame out, if we pay cash up front and we get the product 8 to 10 months in the future, what happens, not assuming that there will anything come about, but if there's a problem or a difference of opinion upon receipt of the equipment, is my only question. With that big of an outlay, expenditure of cash.
So what's built into this proposal is representatives from our fire department actually going down to Florida, where this is going to be built to get a hands-on inspection of the vehicle prior to its delivery. So they will be able to go down to Florida and inspect that.
Good.
What happened to Wisconsin?
Well, the Sabre is built in Florida now. That's a little cheaper option. You don't have as much engineering cost.
But it will be delivered by the company that's building it? We won't be bringing it home?
I think we'll be bringing it home. They will deliver it, but it comes at a cost, and so I believe we will be going down to get it.
Okay.
They inspect it, then they'll bring it up here for us. They don't have to drive it home.
Bill, they will bring it up here.
Yes, they will.
Who's they? The company or our guys?
A drive-away service after it's inspected by the fire department. Drive-away service delivers it.
Okay. And that's part of the price?
Yes, it is. It's in there.
Okay.
That's what I thought I read, that's why I asked it.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we pay the full price, cash of $529,019 for the fire truck.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Bond council.
All right, so again, this is another placeholder item for your packet. When we went to obtain proposals for the professional services associated with bond counsel legal representation, we obtained 3 proposals. And what I have in front of you is a professional services contract agreement with Mika Myers PLC. And this is going to look identical to the one with Thrun Law. However, it has Mika Myers PLC. It has a consideration of $17,000, and it has a signatory at the very end of Mr. Mark Nettleton. So what I am trying to be able to do is get the Mika Myers to become the bond counsel of the township. Basically, Thrun Law had exception with section number 6 as far as the indemnification. Back and forth several different times, and they are not willing to honor the language in there. They did receive a copy of the template professional services contract, and we could not come to terms. Basically, we're moving on from Thrun Law onto Mika Myers, and I confirmed with them today. They will honor the same proposal that they submitted, as well as the professional services contract. So what I am looking for is basically the approval of the professional services contract agreement, as well as the approval for the supervisor and clerk to execute this contract.
Comments?
On page 5, above the change to Mark E. Nettleton, a change to Mika Myers.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we approve the professional services contract agreement as set forth with the change on page 5, changing the name Miller Canfield to Mika Myers PLC,
Supervisor and clerk to sign the contract?
and the can we do it in separate or in one? Okay, fair enough, okay, then, and that we authorize the supervisor and clerk to sign the contract. Ah,
Support.
Motion by Mr. Cummings, support by Mr. Palmer.
okay.
Roll call.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Gieske.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Consumers Energy Planet Award.
All right, so on Friday, we were able to email out the Consumers Energy Foundation, the 2020 Planet Award. It has the letter of intent in there, as well as an explanation from Roe as far as what it is we're trying to be able to do. Again, this has to do with the Oscoda Exploration Trail, phase 3, the bike path, and with the due date approaching on February 4th, I was hoping to be able to obtain board approval to submit the letter of interest to Consumers Energy.
Comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move that we go for it here. Move ahead with this consumer program.
Do we need to specify whether it's the land and or the water in the motion, or is it?
Well, Rick's recommendation was the land option.
Right, yeah. So then support,
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call?
Mr. Gasky.
Yes.
Mr. Cummings.
Yes.
Mr. Byer.
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer.
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Resolution and ordinances, amendment to ordinance 165, a change to section 4.13.1.2, adopting form-based code. First is regarding form-based code in the State Street Business and Neighborhood District.
All right, so what you'll see is a January 20th, or a memo from the zoning administrator dated January 20th. And it's regarding the rezoning to form-based code with the deletion of the B1 district. So how I have this, if you look at the intent, so there's really an introduction into the intent of the State Street Business and Neighborhood District and the form-based code. The second paragraph sums it up. It says the State Street Business and Neighborhood District zoning is a departure from traditional zoning in that it focuses less on the use of a parcel and more on how to integrate private and public spaces. The State Street Business and Neighborhood District, or the SSBN, zoning intends to merge public infrastructure standards with private development regulations to create a viable business district that is equally shared between cars and pedestrians. Key elements include better land use balance, expanding the uses permitted by right, expediting the review process, bringing buildings closer to the street to facilitate walkability, and increasing density of residential dwelling units. So that kind of sums it up. And so the board will understand that the State Street and Business Neighborhood District is along the 23 corridor from Division Street to Evergreen.
Comments?
Yeah, I'd like to, Mr. Gajewski posed a question Friday concerning resident space in the buildings. And I looked into the ordinance, and what it states is in three of the districts, the traditional commercial, the CMU2 and CMU4, residents would be allowed on the first story as long as they don't adjoin a public thoroughfare, and they would have to be in the rear of the building. So in other words, for instance, a building that's on US 23, they couldn't have a living residence on the front because it's not allowed along a public thoroughfare. If somebody were to buy a block downtown and build a building that was on US 23 and Lake Street, there wouldn't be allowed any residents in there at all because the back of the building would be on a public thoroughfare. So in those districts, what we've referred to in the past is like resident manager quarters. They would be allowed on the first floor, but they would have to be in the back of the building and not on adjacent to a public thoroughfare. And what it encourages is residential space on a second floor, because with the new movement around the country is for people who years ago, there was urban flight and everybody moved to the suburbs. Well, now the younger generation are moving back into town. They want to be near where they can walk the things that they want to do. Restaurants, stores, community centers, libraries, those kinds of things. So that's where in the form-based code is one that's recognized by MEDC, and it also scores us extra points on the RRC certification. That's a benefit because it's more easily understood by developers when they look at zoning. And I think part of the problem over the past years is that our zoning in the downtown, we've kind of shot ourselves in the foot on that. It's sort of restrictive zoning where, in our zoning now, we focus on what's allowed and then try and think of every possible business that could be in a zoning district and then list that as a permitted use and then other things as special uses. Whereas this is not that not that restrictive. So I think it would be very helpful in developing our downtown area. And as we expand to form-based code throughout the township, I think that same effect will happen in making it easier for growth.
I don't have a problem with that, Bill. None whatsoever. My question was, what's required for resident, not a cot in the back room, which is happening. That's what my question is. How are you gonna enforce somebody living in a facility in the back of the building by just a bed or a cot without anything else? How do you enforce that? That's my question.
I don't know how you would enforce that, even with the zoning we have.
That's what I'm getting at. I mean, I can own a building downtown, and I don't have the money to buy a place or live it other than in that building. I can just throw a cot in the back room, and I'm good to go, according to what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's not living.
Is your wife okay with that?
Come on, you know better than that, Jim. But that's my point. Anybody can just throw a cot in the back room and they're good to go. I don't agree with that.
Quite frankly, I don't know how you.
That's what I'm getting at. How do you
Govern that.
enforce something like that?
Somebody chooses to live that way, I guess. Because under this ordinance, it's allowed in the first floor as long as it's in the back of the building.
That's what I'm getting
And the
at.
back of the building doesn't abut a public thoroughfare. So
Rest of my case.
there's just some things that are difficult to enforce. And, I mean, you know that, so.
There's a definition for that, Martin, in the 165 ordinance. What a residence is.
Oh,
There's a
there is?
definition in the 165 ordinance of what a residence consists of. That
Okay.
of would still apply throughout the district.
Now, how do you enforce it?
That enforcement is not what we write into ordinance. Enforcement is what you,
That's what I'm getting at. How do you enforce it?
definitions by ordinance, residence has a definition in our ordinance, what's considered a residence. A manager's residence is defined in the ordinance 165. That's not gonna change. That's in a regular ordinance. How you enforce that is through your code compliance officer. They write civil infractions. That's how any ordinance is. If it's written as a code, then it comes under the jurisdiction of whoever has a jurisdiction for enforcement of a code. If it's a municipal code, it would go under the police department's jurisdiction. If it's in the 165 ordinance, it would come under your civil infraction rules. So this form-based code here is replacing a district. It doesn't replace certain things in the 165 ordinance, only what's specified in this ordinance. So your definitions in the 165 ordinance are the same as what they are at the present time today. So if it went to court, then it would be defined, they would take the definition and based on that make their determinations. So it's not, nothing has changed in that area. I hope that answers the.
It's no different than a lot of other things. If you
realize
can't
that.
visibly see it from the outside,
You-
then if evidence is brought forward to us that justifies some sort of legal action, then we can take it. Until that point,
Yeah.
there's not much. we can
You
do.
also have to,
You can have a mess.
you also have to
Yeah.
apply occupancy for manager's quarters. So when it would apply for occupancy for manager's quarters, that's when it'd be determined if it meets the guidelines of a manager's quarters.
They don't apply, you don't know.
Well,
But-
we write the ordinances, you guys are in charge of the other end of it.
But generally, on most of our compliance issues is based on complaints. So if we get a complaint from somebody, then our code enforcement officer will go and check it out, and then if they don't meet the qualifications, the definition of a residence, then they would be cited. But, like you say, somebody throws a cot in the back room, if nobody complains and you don't know about it, I mean, it's pretty difficult to enforce something that you don't know about. But generally, most of our code compliance is based on complaints. Our code compliance officer in general doesn't go out driving around the township looking for, he gets plenty of phone calls from people complaining about
Nobody's gonna see
a
it.
lot of things. So.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Is there a motion for item A?
Yeah, I would move to approve the adoption of form-based code in the State Street Business and Neighborhood District as presented in the packet.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings, yes, I'm sorry, my apologies. Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
I was way down the list. Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Is there a
Is that like
motion?
feeding the witness?
If I had voted no, we'd be in trouble.
Is there a motion regarding item B?
Okay.
I'll move to approve the rezoning of the State Street Business Neighborhood to the new form-based code, zoning districts as described.
Support. Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Weed. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Is there a motion for item C?
Well, I'll go for the trifecta here. I'll move to delete the B1 section from the old ordinance 165.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Byer. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. All right, under other, blood drive request.
Right, so your packet contains a letter from, her name is Iris Lawrence, and she is a employee in the Awney Medical Center. She is asking to have the community blood drive within Awney Medical Center on Thursday, February 27th. She's been working with Versity Blood Centers, and she has specific requests in there, and Versity is the entity that will be able to name the township as an additional insured to complete this request.
Comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I move that we agree to allow this organization to use the Awney Medical Center for a blood drive.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. Absent voter count board equipment.
All right, so the next two items and other deal with the absent voter count equipment. And so this is an email from the clerk to me concerning the State Bureau of Elections, and they are incentivizing the ability for the township to purchase this equipment, and they are subsidizing 50% of the tabulator. And what that request in there, the clerk is asking for the township board to approve an amount not to exceed the $2,750 associated with buying this piece of equipment. And John
Comments?
can give details on specific, how this will increase efficiencies on those election days.
This is for just one?
One tabulator, correct.
That would be enough?
Yes, we have 4 existing tabulators, one for each precinct. What an absent voter counting board is essentially a 5th precinct dedicated to, I use the term precinct loosely, but dedicated to absentee ballots of all 4 precincts. So we just need one additional tabulator in order to meet that need.
Okay.
And with the with the 2016 presidential election turnout, 2020 being a presidential year, I would expect similar numbers. That in and of itself,
What were those numbers, if you recall?
I wouldn't want to quote you an error. Not having administered the election firsthand, they're not seared into my brain as much as probably the prior administrations. I could reference them. I could.
I
send
was just
them out
curious,
to
it
you.
was a lot, or?
It was high. It was
Very high.
record breaking.
I see. Okay.
To my recollection. I don't know the exact number or percentage. And then in 2018, the state of Michigan, there were ballot initiatives to for a number of election topics, but one of them being the reduction of a requirement for an absentee ballot. It doesn't not required to age or anything. No reason to vote absentee. So that's reasonably, we can expect that will increase the demand or the amount of absentee ballots.
So what does this do as far as our increased, do we have cost with regard to maintenance and other things which we already have with the other 4 devices, but now we have another one for the 5th, so
Yes.
what does that do for us, or is that something that the county takes care of, or?
So in 2017, the state of Michigan, there was a replacement of voting equipment, and the state of Michigan provided a grant to all local jurisdictions and covered the cost of the 4 tabulators that we have, one for each precinct existing in the local jurisdiction, and then they've covered 50% of a 10-year, so 5 years out of a 10-year contract for maintenance. So we're still under that for the original 4 tabulators. This program that they're rolling out for absent voter counting boards covers 50% of the original cost, and then similar, the 5 years out of a 10-year contract, 5 years would be covered by the state for maintenance.
I see. Okay.
So,
John, have you ever had a mechanical problem with any of the 4 that we do have?
other than ballot jams on election night, whether that's due to humidity or the number of ballots, and a thing you find with absentee ballots at the end of the night, during the day, there's natural space in between voters because they're in line or they're voting their ballots, and it takes them some time. Absentee ballots at the end of the night, you're feeding them, like feeding a bottle machine at a grocery store, and you sometimes put the bottle in too early. It doesn't like that. So, but jams are, I wouldn't call those mechanical failures. They're jams. But the company that the state contracts with comes out and cleans the machines in between elections. So we experienced that, and that reduced the number of jams. So just to answer your question in short, jams have been the only experience.
On the 2750 figure, that's 50% of the cost?
That's the best estimation I could get. Yep. I contacted the county clerk who, when the state goes about, they give the contract to the county, and that way one county, every jurisdiction in that county is using the same equipment. The county makes a determination together. So the county holds the contract, and I checked with her on the price under that contract, and that's the reference that I have. So
So the tabulator self costs a little over $5,000.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. So the only other cost, I guess, to kind of get to your question a moment ago, it would be there's a bin that the tabulator sits on that collects ballots. So there would potentially be a cost there. To my understanding, I still have a little bit more research to do on this topic, but there's that, and then potentially the hiring and pay of additional election workers to work this precinct.
Sure.
But it's always my intention as clerk to get as many election workers as possible. So I'd be seeking additional election workers, whether we have an absent voter counting board or not.
Right.
The more workers, the better on election day. So
So you're saying that the machine itself, which sits on top of that black plastic-looking bin, as you call it,
yes.
The bin itself is not included in this acquisition.
To my understanding, and I haven't gotten an affirmative or a negative on that explicitly,
funny. All
but
right.
to my understanding, no. And I want to be cautious. And,
Was it before, with the first four?
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So there's a possibility that it is. And I've had a brief conversation with the Bureau of Elections. So
Okay.
so
So it could be a little bit more coming up.
could be,
Got it.
yeah. And I don't want to promise that it is and have it turn out not to be. So.
I get it.
You indicated Friday, John, that this would be more efficient and we get the election workers out earlier as
Idea.
opposed to what sometimes they aren't there now till way late
Yes.
in the night.
Yes, ideally, especially on an election with high turnout, such as a presidential or even a governor's race, the flow of voters does not always allow for the processing of absentee ballots during the day. The workers are so busy that they can't get to the absentee ballots, which then leaves a stack of absentee ballots when the polls close at 8 o'clock. Everyone leaves, and when you would be shutting down, you are now processing hundreds to thousands of absentee ballots in the precinct. So that would remove those. People would be working on those throughout the day, dedicated people. And so, yeah, you could cut potentially hours off of a day.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the absent voter count board tabulators at a cost not to exceed $2,750.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Gieske. Roll call.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. The 2020 appropriations adjustment for the county board equipment.
All right,
Voter
so
county board, sorry.
So, based on the previous action item, what I had set up here is the 2020 appropriations adjustment for the absent voter county board equipment for the general fund elections cost center. It's 101-262-890.000 contingency from $500 up to $3,250. That increasing total 2020 general fund appropriations by $2,750 to accommodate this equipment. And so that would increase total general fund appropriations from $3,199 and $3,199,218 up to $3,201,968.
Comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the appropriations adjustment to general fund election cost center contingency from $500 to $3,250, an increase of $2,750.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Palmer, support by Mr. Cummings. Roll call.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes. Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. So we have separate things here for 3 and 4.
We just did 3.
Yep, that was 3.
Okay, so 4,
Is the board confirming authorization for business attraction efforts with trip to Cape Canaveral Tuesday?
okay, that's not what my packet has, so that's why. All right then, board confirming for the Cape Canaveral.
So when we sat here last meeting, I was hoping there was going to be an announcement today that we would be able to have something associated with site selection for Michigan Launch Initiative. That has not happened and has been postponed. So with that, I wanted to wanted to confirm with the board that we are, myself, the Economic Improvement Director, the board still intends to send us down there to Cape Canaveral next Tuesday through Friday.
Comments?
Has there been any discussion between the township and is it Mama that's invited the township down? Any discussion as to this is still their desire to have us come down and?
Absolutely. So the last iteration was they were coordinating with the governor's office, and that's why it was postponed from the 22nd to the 27th. And so, obviously, they're still coordinating. So there hasn't been a site selection announcement with that. I was hoping to be able to say, yep, we got a piece of this, and that's why we need to go down there. Honestly, now that that hasn't been announced, I think it's imperative that we go down there and show our interest in the Michigan Launch Initiative and better understand the companies that make up an ecosystem of a spaceport.
And the offer still stands for us to come down.
Absolutely. I just wanted to confirm that with the board that, hey, I know I told you last time we're going to have an announcement and then we're going down. Well, with that announcement not being there, wanted to still make sure.
Well, it would seem to me not having the announcement makes it more imperative that we do.
Absolutely.
And having the airport members going down will have a good representation from Oscoda Township.
I agree.
Is there a motion?
I move that we authorize the business attraction effort trip to Cape Canaveral, February 4th through Friday, February 7th. As talked about earlier, previous meetings.
Support.
Motion by Mr. Byers, support by Mr. Palmer. Roll call.
Mr. Palmer,
Yes.
Mr. Byer,
Yes.
Mr. Cummings,
Yes.
Mr. Gieske,
Yes.
Mr. Nordine, yes, Mr. Weed.
Yes, motion's passed. We're now into our second public comment section. Anyone may speak. There's no need to fill out a card. There's a 4-minute time limit. If you come up to speak, please introduce yourself. Does anybody wish to speak? Okay. Board comment. Anybody have anything?
No?
I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We're adjourned. Thanks for coming out.